You're watching Fox 17 News, Nashville in Focus.
Happy Sunday morning, everybody. I'm Scott Couch. Welcome to the show. We have a lot to talk about. 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and all the topics we can squeeze in 30 minutes. Let me introduce everybody and we'll wade in. Steve Gill nearest me, publisher of TriStar Daily, also a conservative television and radio host. And right beside him, Gracie Freeman, Democratic Party organizer, campaign veteran, and all-around top lady. Glad to have you back with us. On the other side of the table, Jasper Hendricks, Democratic strategist, current chair of the Metro Fair Board. And between Jasper and I, Megan Lee Podsiedlik, who is a correspondent with The Pamphleteer, which is a great conservative outlet online that I read daily, and also a conservative commentator. Good to have you back with us.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, let's wade in. The big topic, obviously, has been continuing fallout from the Nashville Electric Service response to the ice storm. Several of us lost power for days, maybe some more than others. As of this, taping, we tape on Friday nights. About 600 people, the last number I saw from NES, right in that neighborhood, we're still waiting for power to be restored. Among those calling for accountability, Nashville's mayor, several members of Metro Council, the Speaker of the Tennessee House of Representatives says we ought to take over control of that board. And my question is, should anybody be replaced? Should the state be sticking its nose in this thing? And Megan Lee, we'll start with you. You lost power in East Nashville for how long?
Just a couple days, and I'm in West Nashville now.
Okay.
We changed venues, but just a couple days, and it came back on. It did a couple surges, and I think a lot of people experienced that, where even some appliances have kind of like crapped the bed for some people in Nashville because of those power surges.
Same.
I think that I don't know what's going on the inside. I don't know the inside clockwork. I do know the process, having talked to Tima and many people over the last 2 weeks about the kind of pecking order, which was unclear from the beginning, which led to a lot of finger pointing. And I think that we will see some of that cleared up, and we might see some firings. I wouldn't be surprised if some things happened within NES, and I actually am looking to see if anything's going to happen within the Office of Emergency Management and see if there's any shortcomings that they find within that office as well.
You think that's going to be a part of the mayor's sort of after-action investigation that's going to take in that too, the whole city response, not just NES?
I hope it is, because I hope it's fair. This is a mayor-appointed board, but I hope that they use the scrutiny to really get to the meat of the actual problems that happen here, because it only hurts Nashvillians and puts their lives at risk to not actually address some of these systemic issues that happened during this storm, because it turned into a disaster within a disaster. And it's really sad to see how that played out with deaths and death tolls and stuff like that. But I am curious, within the OEM, I would say that it really comes down to a 50-50 split. The OEM is in charge, which is the Office of Emergency Management, is in charge of making sure that Nashvillians are safe during an emergency. And so even though NES had a lot of responsibilities, tree trimming and stuff, it still comes down to the OEM, no matter what information they were getting from NES, to take care of the citizens in Nashville. And so if you don't give them at least 50% of the credit for this disastrous response, then I think that's unfair, and we'll see how that pans out with this mayor-appointed board that is going to check in.
On Friday, I read Bruce's column, somewhat frequent guest on the show, on the Tennessee Lookout, where he was talking about, among other things, whether the city should have, called for people to leave their homes faster, to your point. OEM's the point person on that. And he also raised serious questions about the website. You check the website and it says, my house is back on, but I'm standing here freezing, and it's not. Your thoughts, Gracie?
I think overall, clearly, there was just an immense failure in so many different systems in terms of preparation and leadership, and pretending that's not the case and skirting accountability is a huge insult to the hundreds of thousands of people who lost power, and then the tens of thousands who continue to have lost power for days on end. I think part of the blame shifting has gone to the NES CEO, and with calls for her removal, and that's against what workers are saying. The workers seem to trust her, and I think that's something that we should be paying attention to. I think that in terms of the communications firm that NES has been using, obviously, that was horrible.
Who was that? I'm not aware of.
I don't even know, and I hope that I never do, frankly. And I think that there are also board members whoever was responsible for the shifting of the tree removal not getting done, aspects like that are going to need to be addressed sooner rather than later. Metro Council is demanding answers sooner rather than later, which I'm totally on board with.
We should not have to wait for a year, as somebody suggested.
absolutely
we might have to wait.
shouldn't.
I'm sorry, it doesn't take that long.
We should not be waiting 6 months for the Mayor's Special Commission to get back to us on this. So I'm glad that Metro Council is demanding answers now, and I do think that they're going to have to look at the Mayor's office in this. The communication was bad, the response was horrible, and the lack of preparation in the situation was just abominable.
And it's not a partisan issue. Steve, you probably had it worse than anybody. You had burst pipes.
Yeah, and I was out for about 8 or 9 days. I got it back in late this week into my house.
Are you back in your place?
I'm back in, but we've got a little bit of repair work. But there's a lot of people much worse off. I will say that I think everybody is in accord. Yeah, there were people that were trying to out the linemen that were going out to eat, and it's like, man, the linemen did an amazing job. They don't deserve any of the blame.
Eat
they were doing
fuel.
everything they could. They just weren't getting direction. They weren't given the preparation. They weren't given the assistance. I think there needs to be an absolute top to bottom full review of everything that went wrong. And you're right, the PR stuff, I mean, it's going to rank up there in the annals of New Coke, Bud Light, and changing the Cracker Barrel logo. They're going to be doing studies at colleges and universities for decades. But I think also you have to look at how some of the response of the mayor's office and others. We did a story at TriStar Daily Friday. Generators were put in the hands of the activist anti-ICE who distributed them to the illegal aliens. More importantly, these anti-ICE activists were causing a delay in the National Guard being deployed because they were fearful that uniformed National Guardsmen would scare the illegal aliens, would create a military look like we have in Memphis. That delayed getting deployment of the National Guard by 2 or 3 days. That could have been more deadly than it was. That needs to be thoroughly
People were
reviewed.
freezing to death.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about immigration status when people are freezing to death.
Exactly.
I've got to squeeze in a break. We're going to pick up the conversation right here when we come back. You're watching Nashville in Focus.
You're watching Fox 17 News, Nashville in Focus.
We're going to pick up the conversation right where we left off, but I will mention this. Metro Council on Tuesday has a special committee meeting where 2 different committees will be discussing natural disaster communications. Did you lose power? I know you were downtown.
Well, I didn't lose power. My mother lost power. They lost power just for a few hours out in Ashland City, but overall, did pretty well. But still couldn't leave the house.
Sure.
Because of the streets and everything. And I think that's part of the problem. Could have been part of the problem also, is that yes, we wanted power to come on, but how could the tree trimmers and the electricians get to those locations, and who was responsible for clearing the path for them to get to those locations. And I think, as Megan was saying, we're going to have to look at the Office of Emergency Management. And we all know that, Emergency Communications Department was going through turmoil during this time.
Yes, their leadership has been
exactly.
disrupted, yeah.
So there's a lot of pieces there, and I think also with the other question is, should the state be involved? No, because they have schools in their districts, that they represent, that have not been to school in 2 weeks. Have they taken a look into those? Why are those schools still out? Why have those children, and especially some of those counties, the 3rd grade reading level, they don't need to be missing any days, and so, but you're too busy over here in Nashville because you want to make a play for TVA. It's all about politics. They cannot win in they cannot win in blue cities, and so they're going after the assets of those in blue cities. And so we're going to see this.
And you see the utilities as another asset.
It's another asset,
focused on.
just like Shelby County Schools. Just like the convention center here, just like the airport,
Authority.
The sports authority. So this is all part of their ploy. That's the only reason why Cameron Sexton got involved.
But Jasper, you mentioned Cheatham County, Sumner County, Williamson County. NES serves those counties and doesn't have any representation on the board, and that's the problem.
That was a whole different. But that was a whole different.
NES was a disaster.
But my sister's neighborhood is different. It's made different, than some of the other places.
But
in
Sumner
Nashville.
County is served by NES.
And some places got hit worse than others. So now you can't just throw a blanket and say that everybody got impacted in the same way when they didn't.
But you have Middle Tennessee Electric that handled it better than NES did. And I think there ought to be representation on some of these other counties on the board.
But did NES have the support? In some of those areas in West Tennessee, you still can't drive down some of those roads. And so again, and then how do you expect a truck to get down there? How do you expect people to get in there to work?
Should the governor have deployed the
Yes,
guard
absolutely.
faster to clear
Absolutely.
the road, to
Yes,
chainsaw
But
brigade?
Can I talk a
was
little bit
putting the pause.
about TEMA? I spoke with TEMA about this process because I was very curious as who comes in when.
Yeah.
And TEMA, when it comes to the Office of Emergency Management, which are locally controlled, they make a request. And if they're making a request of the state, they go through TEMA. And that is also of national aid and stuff like that. But they're in conversations with OEM or any county that has an emergency, and it isn't TEMA is like talking with potential assets that they can deploy, but it isn't until the Office of OEM makes the request. And so to blame TEMA for not sending things, it really comes down to
If I
the
didn't
Office of
ask,
Emergency
right, yes,
Management
and make my
making
situation
sure,
known to
hey,
you.
we've had these. You haven't delivered.
This is
Why
an
haven't
issue.
you delivered
Right.
them? And I talked to TEMA. They were the most open. Can I talk a little bit about NES's PR campaign or their
lack of,
cover your butt campaign? Is when I went through some of their press conferences, I ran it through AI. This is probably the only good thing to use it for. And 70% of their second meeting was just rhetoric, trying to get ahead of the narrative. It wasn't informative. People didn't know when the timeline was. And it was not just a disaster because of the actual ice storm. It was a disaster because nobody could plan. Nobody can put themselves in a safe place until this storm and all of the wreckage
website
cleared
and the
out.
different mechanisms they use to communicate with people could not be reliably relied
That
upon.
really bothers me in the mayor's office. Way too much technology and not enough door-to-door contact.
Yes.
What is
Yes.
going on? People who
Yes.
don't have power cannot go onto their phones. Old
Exactly.
people don't know how
Yes.
to use the
Call
QR
for a
code.
ride to one of three
You advertise it
warming
on
shelters in
television saying, if you need a place to stay, call this. They
They
don't
relied
have power.
so
So much
heavily.
on nonprofit organizations like Turk going door to door, canvassing neighbors, canvassing downtown. And the nonprofit
It's old-fashioned, but it
organization
works.
structure is not supposed to be relied upon
They
so
relied
robustly.
so heavily also on the media. They hate
Yes.
and hate and hate the media. They never want to give them any answers. But in a time of a crisis, the media has to be on our side running this PR campaign
that's where
for us.
people turn.
And that's why
Yeah.
people died.
Increasingly.
So
Yes.
I really want to see some scaling back on the technology and a little bit more boots on the ground.
My
when it comes to
favorite
It was
was when
just
they were
like-
putting out, if you don't pay your bill, we're not going to turn off your power. I already don't have power. How is that going to
You've
happen?
already turned off the power.
But what would also be interesting is to take a look at what some other cities, and I think I've been posting the mayor of Philadelphia and her response to the storm and everything, because the people of Philadelphia were kind of upset as well. And so she implemented programs where they paid people, to come out and work and help to clear ADA paths.
paid them every
and
day.
they paid them every day.
Yeah.
So there were mayors
Day
who were
workers.
coming up with innovative ways to
Right.
get the people back to normal. But here we have a mayor that wants to play a blame game.
I've got to squeeze in a commercial break, but we have a great deal of ground to cover. We're going to take up what the governor laid out as his agenda in the State of the State when we come back.
You're watching Fox 17 News, Nashville in Focus.
In his eighth and final State of the State address, a little under a week ago, the governor thanked first responders, for working so hard. We wondered last week if he would mention, the ice storm. He did. Jasper, he also did what we thought he might and said, I want to double the number of scholarships, so to send kids to private schools. Is there any mood, even among the Republicans, to do this? What do you hear?
I think we're going to hear a lot of discussion about this, not just because there are a couple of other proposals that were on that's in his proposed budget. Also, I think $40 million for the maintenance of for charter schools.
Yes.
For buildings that they receive for free already from the state. So
Roofs, air conditioning,
why
things
they-
of this nature.
Right, yeah. So we gave you the buildings for free, to use the building for free. Now you want us to come back. When we asked you, if we give you these buildings,
Can you keep 'em up?
Can you keep them up? You said yes. And so now this year, you're coming back now and asking us for money, for this. And so I think there's some answers that people are going to have to get, because we haven't been told the truth, or the people who actually agreed, because we knew they weren't telling the truth, but they're going to have to answer to folks.
I would love for school boards to answer as well sometimes.
Yeah. Steve, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Jasper's right. The lack of transparency about the whole voucher plan has been a problem from the beginning. It continues to be. They still won't tell us what percentage of kids that are getting the money were already in private schools. They're still hiding that. They, I think, have no shot at getting the 20,000 more that the governor is wanting to double the number. Built into the plan was like another 5,000. That might be within reach, but the budget's going to be tight. And again, I think people are asking more and more questions, and you've got rural legislators who are recognizing there's no benefit to their districts. It's an election year. Teachers are the biggest block of voters in their districts. And the teachers got $2,000 last year to kind of buy their support. That was a one-time deal. They're not going to get more money this time. So I think the money's too short to make it happen.
Your thoughts on Megan Lee?
Well, I think that, this is Governor Lee's last year. He might not have as much ammo or much weight, or he's kind of like a
lame duck.
Yeah, a lame duck as far as pushing this particular doubling of this ESA program. But it is an election year for a lot of legislators. This remains a very popular thing amongst GOP voters in the state, even though we hear certain counties in different areas that don't feel like it benefits them. We do see that because of the national attention when it comes to education choice, it is still a popular topic, especially among the GOP in the state. So I'm not certain how this is going to look. It really depends on what kind of heat is put on it during the session.
Actually, studies have come out over the last the last few days, and it's showing that one of the key drivers to Democrats overperforming in some of these other states is the voucher program.
This issue.
It's this issue. And so I don't know, that's what we saw it in Iowa, where Democrats flipped the seat in Iowa. We saw the 3 seats in Mississippi. And we saw the Texas, last week with the Texas Senate seat. There was a 30-point swing. There was a negative 13, 14. Donald Trump won that seat, but 13, 14 points, and then the Democrat ended up winning by 13, 14 points. And so, but it was one of the key drivers was about vouchers. So I don't know if we're going to see, that swing here in Tennessee.
Tracy, your thoughts before we head to break?
I love talking about the vouchers with Steve, because you'd never know that we're supposed to be on different sides of the issue. We think it's a total scam. Tennessee's 43rd in spending per pupil in the country. I don't think we've gotten an exact number on the number of vouchers going to kids already in private school, but I've heard it's around 2 and 3. We've got kids who can't get lunch because Governor Lee rejected the funding for lunches in this upcoming summer. We've got overcrowded classrooms. We've got people driving their kids to school on inadequate roads because of our infrastructure backlog. And everybody's $58 billion, and everybody's paying an insanely high grocery tax. And we're worried about giving these private
private school kids. And they muddy the waters on school
coupons.
Choice versus vouchers. People tend to support school choice. They do not support vouchers. Donald Trump supports school choice, not vouchers, and they keep deceiving people here in Tennessee.
Got to squeeze in a break. We will be right back right after this.
You're watching Fox 17 News, Nashville in Focus.
Talk about campaign finances briefly. Governor's race. Marsha Blackburn says, I've raised $5.5 million in 5 months since announcing. Studies indicate about 75% of that came from other states. John Rose has a very similar amount of money. He donated $5 million of that, which means he's raised a little over $1 million, but almost all of his money came from Tennessee. And let's see, Chaz Mulder out, gaining Congressman Ogles in that 5th district race. But the question is, will it make any difference?
Well, when you're looking at Mr. Mayor Mulder and his $1.2 million and outpacing Ogles as far as private contribution, I think that you have to look at how Ogles has won in the past. He didn't have a lot of his own. Well, he didn't have a lot of his own money, but certainly a lot of PACs came in with a lot of money, and this frustrated a lot of people during those elections because they're like, hey, we have this, we have people actually bought into our campaign, and you're just relying on PAC money, and people did not like that. I remember very, very well because I got many angry emails. So I don't know if this is an indicator that it really makes that much of a difference in district. District 5.
Chaz Mulder clearly, is finding people to support his campaign, but can you outdo the Trump endorsement at the end of the day?
Yeah, we've spoken about this before. I'm not sure. Like, we see people like Marsha who are getting the vast majority of their money from out of state. She's a DC animal. Nobody is surprised by this. We got John Rose contributing $5 million to his own campaign and calling it momentum because it's coming from in-state. Andy Ogles is going to come through with a Trump endorsement. And I want to have hope because, Chaz Mulder outraised every Tennessee congressional Democratic candidate in 2024 before the end of January, which I think speaks volumes. But that Trump endorsement is just such a mountain to overcome.
We've kind of seen it before.
The D trip behind Chaz Mulder, so I guess that gives us hope, but we'll see how it goes.
Your thoughts, Jasper?
You can have all the money that you want that in the world, but it's all about how you spend it. If you have $1.2 million and you spend $1 million on consultants, no, you're not going to win. If you have $1.2 million and you spend $1 million on the ground, turning out voters, making sure that voters are registered properly, that voters know that an election is coming up, that voters can get to the polls in order to vote for you in the early vote in every way, mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, everything. You have to put it on the ground. And if he doesn't do that, then no, he can't win. But he can win. He can beat a Trump endorsement if they go out and work.
Interesting thought. I've got less than a minute.
He has a lot of money. That is a plus 15 or 17 Republican dark red district, and I don't think it's the Trump endorsement as much as the demographics of that district.
Sure.
I think in the governor's race, John Rose can put another 5-10 million into the race from his own bank account, but you got to start spending it now. There's a big name recognition gap between him and Marsha.
Yes.
A lot of that is what she was spending last year. She has about 90% name recognition. He's got to cut into that before Trump issues an endorsement in that race.
I think in Texas, the Republicans spent over $2 million on that Senate seat, and the Democrats spent a little over $100,000, and they still won that plus 13.
And Republicans were fighting with each other in that district. We'll see.
I hate to, we're going to have to leave it there. We are flat out of time. Good conversation. Thank all of you for coming. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week right here on In Focus.